right, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, evening, if you're going to be listening to the archive. So, because I can't see, let's lay down some ground rules. So, I cannot see like a raise of hands or whatever, so we're going to be clapping. How many are happy with that? Okay, so how many of you actually fly in a flight simulator? All right, about all of you. And actually, how many of you have actually flown totally blind? That's what I thought. So my name is Sarah Alawami. I have been flying since, flight simming since about 2017 or so. We'll be going over the add-ons that we have used later on. And my goal, my real life goal, is to get this actually into a real airplane so that we might be able to fly for real. I want to get someone who is into aviation. I want to get a totally blind person into commercial flight, and that hopefully is my legacy. Now, hopefully I don't die trying. All right, so you jump in your airplane, you take your clearance, you do whatever you need to do. You ask for a pushback, you get your pushback, you taxi the runway, you ask for clearance for takeoff, you get it, you take off. That's a pretty normal procedure, right? So, how many of you think you can do all of this with your eyes closed? None. Well, what you're about to see, and next slide, are the add-ons that we use. So we use It's Your Plane, FSX Pilot, and for whatever reason, my arrows aren't cooperating. Okay, so we use It's Your Plane, FSX Pilot, FsTramp, which was used between 2017 and 2019, 2018 and 2019. 2019 and 2020. We used TFM 2019 to present, and we'll actually be getting more into that. PMDG. How many of you know what PMDG? How many of you heard of PMDG? All right. Yeah. So. How many who would have thought that if I said I can fly a PMDG airplane? How many would have thought that? Yep. So we can. We can. Thank you to TFM. Next slide. Okay. So the add-ons that we use. We're first going to go over It's Your Plane. You probably don't remember It's Your Plane. We used, I believe it started in about 2000 and I want to say 9 or 10. There is actually going to be a video going over most of the history, so if I miss it, Andy and Jason will correct me on that one. And you can control it by voice. Checklists, you could do those with your voice. Pushback, you can do that. You could do that with your voice. Takeoff, heading speed and altitude, you could actually control all of that with your voice. And next slide. Okay, FSX Pilot, one of my least favorite add-ons. You can, though, enter commands in via text. You can actually import a flight plan, however, it's got to be in the FSX Pilot format. By the way, how many ever heard of FSX Pilot? None? One? One? Okay, don't be shy. Just one. I forgot to ask, how many heard of It's Your Plane? Okay, 2 of you. All right, that works. And you can be honest with me if you haven't, whatever. Yeah. It's not, FSX Pilot is not very good at takeoffs and or landings. You also must tune every single plane, and if you lose that INI file, you're basically SOL because you've got to start over. And I mean you have to tune every single plane for takeoff and landing. It was really annoying, but at the time, that's what we had. Next slide. FsTramp. You might know about it's FS Navigator. How many have heard of FS Navigator? FsTramp, by the way. Well, okay, FS Navigator, okay, but how many have ever heard of FsTramp? A few. All right. How many of you liked using FsTramp? Uh-huh. I'm glad the developer's not here. So, cons, only cons, clunky interface. It froze my system, It had a tendency to crash if I wanted to change the route, if I wanted to deviate with VATSIM. I couldn't do that because FsTramp would just crash. It really, for me, was not worth the time to learn, but at the time, that's what we had. Next slide. Talking Flight Monitor, heretofore known from now on as TFM because it's a lot easier to say. Now, I know that none of you have heard of TFM unless us visually impaired pilots have been talking about it. So it reads geonames, it reads your location with Bing and with geonames, and you might or might not hear that in today's presentation. Right now, it allows with PMDG at present you can control the CDU, you can program the CDU. You can pretty much do everything with the PMDG, and I'm going to stress everything. And we can do pretty much everything. We can request clearance. We can know our position at a gate on a good day. We can warp to the runway. More about that in a minute. We can do everything that we can do, that you guys can do, except for one thing. What do you think that would be? Shout it out. I can't hear. What do you think that would be? Yeah. So that's the only thing we can't do with TFM. And I don't really want to say yet, because we can do that offline rather, but right now with SimBrief, we cannot. And this is what we have right now. Next slide. Now, Declan, I know that you're not here at the moment, but we are going to be now hearing TFM in use on a very, very short 24-minute flight, except he cut it down to 12 minutes, using TFM and its functions. So take it away, Declan. Next slide, the video.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, no, never mind. It's Andy and Jason. Okay. Oh, stop the, yeah. Go back to the slide before. I missed it. Whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what we're going to hear now is Andy and Jason. I'm just so excited to give this demo. Yeah. So Andy and Jason, they started developing TFM in 2019. They're going to go into the history. And basically, we will be hearing a demo of TFM. We will not be hearing a demo of them flying, but they're going to be going over TFM. They're going to be going over the add-ons, how this thing got started, and he's going to end the presentation by going over what's next. So now take it away, Andy and Jason.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Fair, and I'm here with Andy Borka. And we are the developers of a free piece of software called Talking Flight Monitor.
And sorry about the broken slide the first time. That was just their name.
So the first thing that people are often wonder is, as a blind person, Andy and I are both totally blind, and why would we be interested in flight simulation? Because flight simulation is, inherently a very visual activity. Lots of awesome scenery and various things like that. But there are actually quite a few people that are blind or low vision that are quite interested in this hobby. And the reasons can range from just, a general interest in aviation. I mean, most of us have been on airplanes, but, some people want to know, well, how does this all work? What are the processes and procedures as people are flying? So that's part of it. And the other thing is people just want to experience what it's like to be in the cockpit of a modern airliner. Several years ago, we could actually do that. We could possibly get, if we asked, we could possibly get into the cockpit of a plane, but that definitely doesn't happen anymore. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of flight simulation accessibility, and then I'm going to pass it over to Andy, and Andy's going to talk about the Talking Flight Monitor software that we've developed. So a little bit of background. As I said earlier, Andy and I are both totally blind. We've been in the technology field for quite a long time, and for a blind person to use a computer, typically we would be using a piece of software called a screen reader. For Windows, the two major ones are a package called JAWS, J-A-W-S for Windows, or NVDA, non-visual desktop access. And in the most basic terms, a screen reader takes the information that's happening on the computer screen and converts that into audible speech. So if I'm in a Word document, I can, browse around and read. If I can read my email, I can read the web. When we start talking about things like flight simulation, though, we have to do some pretty creative things to make that work. So history of flight simulation. So as far as accessibility, flight simulators are not accessible really in any way. With Microsoft FSX or Lockheed Martin Prepared, you can load up the system and use the screen reader to get the plane, select your aircraft, select your location as far as an airport. But then once the simulation starts, there's really nothing. You can't access the menus, you can't read the gauges, you can't do anything. So what we've needed to do over the years is come up with creative ways of getting access to this information. So the very first piece of software that I was aware of that gave us access to flight simulation was something called FS Navigator. And this was somewhere around 2004. And this gave us access to FS 2004, and I believe one earlier version. Pretty basic. You could control the aircraft autopilot through a moderately accessible interface. It wasn't designed to be accessible, but it just sort of was. And so you could take off, you could fly around. You couldn't really. You could follow a flight plan. If the plan was loaded into your autopilot, and you could maybe land, but probably not. If you were very lucky, you might be able to land. So in 2010, this is when the sort of fairly large leap forward came in access to flight simulation. And this is a product called XPlane, which was produced by a gentleman in British Columbia. And this was a speech enabled access to flight simulation. So it was all voice activated. And this was really quite amazing for its time. It provided access to many aircraft systems. You could request, request altitude and speed and all kinds of things like that. The problem, though, is that XPlane stopped development, and it was a lot of its features were online. So when the software was shut down, it just went away entirely. You couldn't access it online. You couldn't use it offline because it was dependent on its servers that didn't exist anymore. So that was unfortunate. 2013, we had something called FSX Pilot, which is another piece of software that allows some access to the aircraft autopilot systems, but on a fairly limited way. You could fly flight plans. The flight plans that you would use with it are somewhat proprietary, and it didn't actually control the aircraft's built-in autopilot. It actually took over from that aircraft autopilot. The next one that we used up until relatively recently is something called FsTramp. And FsTramp was a sort of a spin-off from FS Navigator. I believe they used a lot of the same code base. And this was a package that allowed us to do quite a lot. We could somewhat accessibly read airport information. We could read descriptions of SIDS and stars, through the FsTramp interface. But it had its share of issues, and so we need another solution. So in 2019, I started developing Talking Flight Monitor, and Andy joined the project in 2020, I believe July of 2020. Talking Flight Monitor honestly started off as a small Python project to see if I could find the closest city to your aircraft and read out using text-to-speech what it was. That really is all it started as. And it snowballed in an unbelievable hurry. Once the community realized that we could get that information, people started asking, well, can you do this? Can you read altitude? Can you read, any other aircraft systems? So Talking Flight Monitor started in May 2019, and it's, as you'll see here very soon, it has grown into something quite huge. All right. All right, so I'm going to pass this over to Andy, and he is going to talk about the key features of Talking Flight Monitor, as well as what are some of the new features. Andy.
So key features of Talking Flight Monitor, or TFM as we call it. There are over 70 hotkeys that you can use just in the main sim window itself. Some of them include altitude, speed, heading, vertical speed, the nearest VOR, nearest city, what city are you currently flying through. You can easily control aircraft, autopilot controls, autopilot speed, altitude, again, vertical speed, heading. You can set comm radios, you can set navigation radios, a whole bunch of things, and the autopilot or MCP comes in quite a lot later when we talk about something that is really cool that we had come up with recently. Again, as Jason said, we use screen readers or text-to-speech software. In the event that somebody does not have one or their screen reader crashes, TFM is self-voicing, so it will pick up in self-voicing mode if it does not detect the screen reader present. And some of the things we have readout that cannot be interrupted, such as ILS, landing aids and things like that, are self-voicing by default. Again, as I said, you have the option of using a screen reader or a braille display or both. There's audible speech output for manual flight. For an example, it has attitude mode, which tells you your pitch in degrees. It tells you your bank in degrees. It has an audible system, a series of tones for runway lineup. We call it runway guidance mode, so it can tell you if you're lined up on the center line. We make industry standard nav aids accessible, like ILS approaches, RNAV approaches, things like that. And the nice, cool thing that came up within the past 6 months to a year, and has ballooned quite a lot and quite well, is the Payware PMDG aircraft series. We have extensive support for that. Most of the 737 and 777 have support. Next slide. New features that'll be coming up soon. A flight planner for freeware aircraft. As Jason said, the FS Navigator and the FsTramp was a flight planner in a sense, but since it had its own issues, we decided to take on the task of creating our own fully accessible flight planner for freeware software, freeware airplanes. A Where Am I and Look Around feature, part of it has already been implemented with being able to see the nearest city and the city you're currently flying through. Expansions would include how far are you from the nearest boundary line, such as in the US. borders, for an example, or a country's borders, a city, state, town, that type of thing. Aircraft profiles for the freeware aircraft. That way you can tell TFM what altitude is the ceiling for that particular aircraft, what is the typical vertical speed that it needs to climb and descend at, and future ongoing expansion of PMDG support. Next slide. If you need to get a hold of us, the website is listed there on the screen, www.talkingflightmonitor.com. If you need to email us, the email address info@talkingflightmonitor.com. We thank you for joining our presentation, and I will hand it back to Jason.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to listen, and definitely keep an eye on that website because we'll be announcing new features as they.
All right, so, whoops. No mic? Okay, there we go. Okay. So, as Andy and Jason said.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Wait a minute.
Hello, everyone.
Sorry, guys. I think that was us in
Okay,
the back
all right,
here.
all right.
Can you give us a slide number or just some information so we can sync up with you?
What?
Oh, we think we're good. We're on about the video on the next
we're-
slide. Is that the right place to be?
And like he said, you can. Oh, are we good to go?
Yeah, we're on a slide that has video done by Declan. Is that the right place to be?
Yeah. And let me actually advance my slide because I'm not. Hold on a minute.
Sorry about that.
Okay, there we go. We're on slide 9. All right. So as you saw, you can access their website at www.talkingflightmonitor.com. And I will spell that really quickly if you're visually impaired and watching the talk. And you want more info, like if you're ever watching the archives, it is www.talkingflightmonitor.com. That's a tongue twister. Okay, so now I'm really excited to actually present one of my blind pilot colleagues. And he is actually going to be showing what Talking Flight Monitor is. He's going to be showing the repositioning from the gate to the runway. He's going to be showing takeoff. He's going to be showing getting to cruise. He's going to be showing descent and the capture of the ILS. He's also going to be showing landing, repositioning from the gate to the runway, and he's going to be showing the cleaning up of the aircraft. So take it away, Declan.
This is the PMDG 737 NGXU cockpit in P3D. It's probably something that a lot of you have seen before and are very, very familiar with. What you probably don't know is that very recently, our blind pilots community has been able to gain access to the PMDG lineup of aircraft thanks to an add-on that we use called Talking Flight Monitor, which gives us access to the CDU and panels. It's a privilege to be able to fly when you're visually impaired or totally blind. It's something that a lot of people don't even consider. And for a long time, we haven't had access to these kinds of payware aircraft. I'm here to show you a little bit about how we access them with our screen readers. When we press a hotkey in Talking Flight Monitor, we fall on the main PMDG CDU menu. And you'll be able to see it looks very similar to the FMC itself, with the blocks of text in columns. We're able to use the hotkeys, the scratch pad, all the various pages. However, they've been put into a format so that they're text and our screen reader is able to read them.
4, setup grader. Line 5, FS Actions grader.
Here we are on the FS Actions on soft key 5 right. And here I am going to enter the fuel and payload for a flight down to Manchester from East Midlands.
Round 2, auto 1, less fuel services grader.
You can hear it reads fuel with the less-than sign, which shows me that it's on the left and it's on soft key 1. I can then go to the scratch pad
button. Edit blank.
and type in my value.
1, 0, 2, 0, 0. blank. 1, 10,206, 130.1/174.4.
I can then hear all the values read back to me, including the fuel which I just entered, 10,200 pounds. Here I am on the payload page,
132.6.
entering our 0 fuel weight.
Equal to 129/148.28.8%, 132.6.
And here I am choosing my departure out of East Midlands.
Blank 3 DTY4P, blank 2 DTY3 and 27.
I can hear that runway 27 is on soft key 2 right.
Execute key available. Blank 2 TNT2N, right flight director on, auto throttle arm switch on, auto throttle light on.
You can also hear the switches being flicked as my first officer gets the aircraft ready for departure.
Blank 2 TNT2N.
We want the Trent 2 November, which I can hear is on soft key
Colon.
2, and I know it's on 2 left. So hitting that and then hitting our execute key
Execute key off.
will read to me that the departure has been entered. Here I am reading through my legs page with the screen reader to check that everything's in order.
269 degrees 0.8 nm.
I can hear that the first waypoint is on a heading of 269 degrees with 0.8 nautical mile leg length.
1 D268A 250/810A.
The waypoint name, the speed restriction of 250, and that we need to be 810 feet or above. All of that can be read by the screen reader, and whilst you might have some trouble hearing it, it's all a matter of practice. Here's my first
lower pressure light
officer
off.
on Flight Simulator First Officer Pro add-on, setting up the aircraft. We're now firing up the APU ready for departure. As you can hear, the screen reader's reading out all the APU switches as they are toggled. And although the visuals may not be stunning, that is not the primary concern of us blind pilots. What is, however, is realism and the thrill of getting to fly, even though we may not be able to in real life.
Apple Gen 1 off, bus light on, engine generator off, bus light on. Apple Gen 1 off, bus light off, engine generator off, bus light off.
And there goes the bus transfer as you heard the screen reader reading out through the Talking Flight Monitor add-on. Here we are pushing back with the help of Talking Flight Monitor, which is able to read the GSX menus. I'm going to toggle my microphone and instruct the First Officer add-on. Start engines. With the help of Talking Flight Monitor,
Number to
which is
generate
able to read the engine readouts. The help of First Officer Pro, which is able to initiate engine start. And the help of GSX, whose
Number to ignition
menus
on.
Talking Flight Monitor is also able to read. We're now pushing back and firing up our engines ready to go. There's no add-on that can yet give blind pilots the ability to taxi to the runway. You may have seen us on the VATSIM network asking for permission to reposition to the runway, and that's exactly what we've done here. Now we're going to perform the takeoff roll with the help of the Talking Flight Monitor add-on, which will give us indications as to whether we are left or right of the runway centerline, and also help us rotate the aircraft before our First Officer add-on will give the plane over to the autopilot so that it can fly the flight plan as published.
Parking brake off.
Parking brake off.
Thrust set.
Left FD master on.
23 knots. 38 knots.
Speed alive.
53 knots.
You can hear the auditory beeping letting us know we're a little bit off the center line, so I applied a
80
little
knots.
bit of rudder.
80 knots.
You can also hear the speeds
96
being
knots.
called out by the text-to-speech voice on the Talking
150
Flight
knots.
Monitor add-on.
123 knots. 136 knots.
V1, rotate.
And we're going to pull back gently.
147 knots.
Up 1.
159
Up 2.
knots.
Up 3. Up 4. Up 5. Up 6. Up 7. Up 8.
160
Up
knots.
And you
9.
can hear
Up
the
10.
text-to-speech
Positive
voice
right,
calling out how
Up
many
12.
degrees of
Up
nose
13.
up we're
Landing
inputting.
gear up.
Taxi off.
VNAV, LDAV, autopilot. VNAV on. Command A on. LNAV on.
Left 19. 1,000 feet.
And the First Officer has
Left
handed
2.
the aircraft over to the autopilot
Guidance disabled.
so that he can continue the flight plan. I can see the aircraft's leveling off at 6,000, which is a restriction on the standard instrument departure. Using Talking Flight Monitor, we're able to access all the panels, including
6,000
the
feet.
MCP panel. By bringing up the
Altitude selected
altitude
8,000.
section, I'm able to press the altitude
Altitude right
intervene
north plus O. Altitude intervene.
and give the aircraft permission to continue climbing. As we're now at cruise and entering our descent phase very shortly, I'm going to bring up the
Altitude right north
altitude
plus O.
option in Talking Flight
Altitude at
Monitor,
8,000.
and I'm able to
Blank.
type in using
0,
my screen reader
3500,
which is our initial altitude for descent today to intercept the ILS of 23 right at
3,500.
Manchester, and that ensures that the aircraft of course has permission to descend, and we can check that
Lockheed.
with the screen reader.
MCP altitude 3,500 feet VNAV.
which tells us that the MCP altitude is set to 3,500 and that VNAV currently has control of that. As our first officer ensures that the glide slope is set in the nav radios,
Refresh, clear, edit, send button, init ref button.
and we continue our descent on this very short flight, we're going to go to the init ref page
Send
with
button.
the screen reader and talking
Edit blank,
flight
please ref, edit
monitor.
reader link, multi-lot approach, ref 1,
Which will
W21,
read
blank 2, 30 degrees, 147 kilograms.
Our speed for flaps 30 as 147 kT or knots. I can always find out the number of track miles to run, which is another feature of Talking Flight Monitor,
Distance to destination, 17/0, 428.
which lets us know that we have 17 miles to run until touchdown, which the software calculates will take a time of 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
Approach hold on. LNAV off.
Approach on, LNAV light off.
As we intercept the
56%.
localizer and the
Flaps
glide
2.
slope,
Down 39%.
Talking Flight Monitor begins reading
Flaps
in
5.
the text-to-speech voice the
Down
glide
44%.
slope indication,
Down 45%.
letting us know exactly where we are
Down
on the
39%.
localizer and the glide slope. It's currently reading that we are
Down
down
50%.
42%
Down 55%.
and now
86% right.
55. I can also
Down
hear that the
55%.
localizer
44%
is
right.
beginning to come in to 44%
55%.
right,
3% right.
3% right, and
Down
so
54%.
I can tell
37% left.
exactly what the instruments are doing.
2,696 feet AGL, 172 knots indicated, minus 1,027 feet per minute, speed edit 160. 100 length, selection 1, 4, 7.
Flaps 25. Flaps 30.
As we're
Flaps
now
30.
fully configured into our landing for Manchester runway 23 right, and the screen reader has just read to me that we are at final flaps 30, which I've just put out. I'm going to instruct the first officer, Command B.
Command
CMDB
B
on.
on.
Now we can be sure that the aircraft will auto-land itself and perform a nice smooth rollout, which is very useful for blind pilots, of course, to make sure
Gear down.
that we are exactly on the runway threshold. Landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Engine start switches. Continuous. Landing gear.
2,000 feet.
Down. Flaps. Set.
When you're visually impaired, we have a lot of add-ons which all come together. The screen reader, of course, and Talking Flight Monitor, and the First Officer Pro add-on, all of which help us to fly these complex aircraft. And of course, we must thank PMDG for allowing the CDU to be accessed in such a way that Talking Flight Monitor can pull the data and show it in a text form that is readable to
1,000
the
feet.
screen reader. As you can hear, the screen reader has just read that we called the past 1,000 feet.
Minimums.
As we're approaching the runway, we'll turn on runway guidance mode to ensure that we remain on the center line,
Speed light, runway guidance, enable current heading.
and the aircraft is auto-flaring, idling the power, touchdown,
Reverse thrust.
reverse thrust.
142 knots. 141 knots. 132 knots.
You can hear the speeds being called by the
170
text-to-speech of Talking Flight Monitor again as we
104 knots.
slow
100 knots.
the aircraft.
91 knots.
80 knots.
79 knots. 67 knots.
60 knots. Reverse idle.
Manual braking.
Manual braking.
53 knots. 26 knots.
And there we have it, another successful flight with the Talking Flight Monitor add-on as our
Talking
first
off.
officer begins the process of clearing up the
Engine off.
aircraft after landing.
Apple low oil pressure light on.
As you can hear, the APU is being fired up and all the switches are being read by the screen reader, which is again thanks to Talking Flight Monitor. I can hear the flaps are being retracted by the movement of the
Apple low oil
lever.
pressure light off.
Of course, again, as blind pilots, we're unable to taxi the aircraft. So from here, we would reposition over to a gate and perform the shutdown flows. I hope you've enjoyed learning how blind pilots can fly the PMDG 737 and how all our add-ons interact together. This has been a game changer for us, and the access that Talking Flight Monitor has given to the PMDG lineup of aircraft is a massive step forward for our community. We can only hope that we will be able to gain access with partnerships with other developers to other aircraft in the future. We have now repositioned to a stand. I'm going to set the parking brake and have the first officer perform the shutdown flow.
Parking brake on.
As you can hear, the screen reader is reading through
Number one ignition
TFM,
off. Number
the
2 ignition
parking
off.
brake, ignitions, the
Left FD master off.
flight
Right.
director,
Spoilers
Single
retracted.
slate. Single
Navigation
MC
off.
operation.
Beacon off. Taxi off.
And
Apple gen 1 off.
the-
Bus light off. Engine generator off. Bus light off. Apple bleed on. Navigation on. Beacon on. Taxi
switching
on.
over to the
Seatbelt sign off.
APU,
Number 1 generator off.
the seatbelt signs off,
Number 2 generator off. Navigation off. Beacon off.
Generators are turning off, the
Left aft
beacon
fuel
light
pump
off.
off. Right aft fuel pump off.
There go the fuel
Right forward fuel pump
pumps.
off.
It may be difficult for some of you to understand exactly what the screen reader is saying, which is why I'm just calling
Electrical hydraulic
out
pump 2 off. Electrical hydraulic pump 1 off.
the
Left pack off. Right
various
pack off.
switches. There go the packs going off. For us, it's second nature, and access to all these
Spoilers
switches is really what helps us to ensure safe operation of these aircraft. It's a different kind of flying, having everything read to you instead of scanning the cockpit in front of you to see what the current state of play of your aircraft is, but all that information, the VATSIM network perhaps, the screen reader, it can be tough, but you learn how to use your ears most effectively. And there we are,
S.
sat on stand, currently with the APU running. It barely scratches the surface, I would say, of how we're able to fly these complex aircraft, but I hope that it has proven to the everyday simmer and developers alike that blind pilots are very dedicated to accessing these kind of aircraft and getting a sense of realism and satisfaction from simming just like anyone else.
So I'm actually going to be going off the cuff a little bit and deviating away a little bit from my presentation because I can, and because I just looked at the time. So, you know, we would love to actually do this with Flight Simulator FS20, but we cannot because it is completely, well, so the narrator mode that they have works, but we cannot effectively turn that on our own. I mean, that's another subject for a different, you know, thing. We cannot effectively turn that on our own. We can't really start at a gate. We start on the runway. We have to use FsTramp to fly. We can't yet use TFM, Talking Flight Monitor. You know, so I would love to use and incorporate Talking Flight Monitor into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, because that would be nice, you know, just to fly what you guys are flying and have an option. Same with XPlane. I would switch to XPlane in a heartbeat if it were accessible, because right now it is completely not. And you know, if anyone at XPlane is listening, please consider making XPlane very much accessible for the visually impaired.
Hi everyone, it's Evan, co-founder of Flight Simulation Association and one of the two people who helped put on the Flight Sim Expo show that happened in September. And I'm here today with Sarah. Hey Sarah, how are you?
Hey, I'm great.
So Sarah was one of our amazing speakers, and of course, if you're watching us here on YouTube, you've seen the presentation that was given at Flight Sim Expo a couple of months ago. In the live presentation in San Diego, we concluded everything with an actual live demo of how Sarah flies the 737 literally blind. And we wanted to recreate that. We obviously can't give you what happened live in San Diego, but we wanted to recreate that right here for you on YouTube. So Sarah and I managed to do some technological wizardry, we hope. We're still not 100% sure this is all going to work out, but we think so. And Sarah, you're just going to basically demonstrate how you can literally fly blind in an approach to Phoenix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's the goal anyway. Hopefully not crash into a fireball, you know, but we'll see.
Exactly. Okay, Sarah, so we're paused, kind of getting set up for the top of descent here. Just before you unpause the simulator, could you maybe walk us through, there's two programs that we can see on the screen. On the left side, there's one that's called FSFO. It's a dark blue program on the left side. Can you tell us what that does?
Okay, sure. So Flight Simulator First Officer Pro, or FSFO, as I will call it from now on, because it's a mouthful. That helps me to do the checklists. Some people use it to control speed. I use it to control, some people use it to control altitude. I use it to control checklists, to do flows, such as the descent checklist, which we'll be doing in a minute. And then the landing checklist, which we'll be doing. So yeah, that's what First Officer Pro is. It basically helps you control the flow, control flows. Basically, it basically helps you also get started when you're on the ground. It helps you start the plane. Helps me start the plane, obviously, because we can't do that by ourselves for the moment.
Yeah, and then on my right,
and there goes my weather.
Yeah, and on my right there is another program. And tell me what that does.
So. So I'll probably just rephrase the question, or rephrase it, because my weather was going off and you wouldn't have heard it. So you're asking basically what TFM is?
Exactly.
All right. So TFM, Talking Flight Monitor, as you guys remember in the demo that was given, that lets me use my instruments, that lets me control the plane, that lets me basically check my altitude, which we'll be hearing, my ground speed, my above ground altitude, my airspeed. It lets me see a heading. It lets me basically, it lets me do most everything that you can do with a PMDG aircraft.
Right. So you're going to be using
soon to be freeware, but right now we're using PMDG.
And so you're going to be using these two programs, plus you also have keybind set up directly in P3D. So you're going to be switching between all three of these things over the course of this approach.
Over the course of the approach, and hopefully nothing as I call borks.
Good. Well, I'll be doing my best to be the eyes of everyone who's on YouTube watching this later on. So if there's something that I want to see that, obviously you can't, I'll let you know. But otherwise, I'm going to try and stay out of your way, and I'll maybe ask you a couple questions as you go. But I'd love to just see you fly this approach and arrival as you would fly it. So I'll step out of your way, and we'll just watch and fly along with you.
Hopefully we can do this. So hopefully this doesn't bork. So I also have a notepad window open, but that's only because I had to write down the ILS frequency. Hopefully that didn't change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over to the prepared window. We'll call it P3D now. We're going to unpause. And a few things of note. I'm going to say miles a lot. I mean nautical miles. It's just easier for me to say.
29,000 feet.
So we are descending at a nice, comfortable minus 44, 1,000 feet, 4,400 feet a minute, not 1,000. Whoa. I'm going to go to my init ref page, and I'm going to enter everything into the speed tape here. We're going to go back to the legs page and run a checklist.
Landing checklist.
No.
Engine start switches. Continuous.
I didn't-
Landing gear. Down.
Sometimes
Flaps.
that happens.
Set.
No.
Feed brake armed.
No. Descent checklist.
Descent checklist. Pressurization.
Thank you.
Set. Recall. Checked.
Sometimes
Auto
that
brakes.
happens.
Set. Landing data. Checked. Altimeters. Checked. Approach briefing. Completed.
And there's one thing I forgot to do.
Checklist
We have
complete.
time. Let's actually import the flight plan. We don't need to, but let's import the flight plan into First Officer Pro. I wish these fields actually read better, but they don't. Star. .pln. Brakes at 4. Cargo flight, because we don't want to hear these announcements. And I probably did get my descent winds already. I actually can't remember if I did, but the weather's clear. Anyway, so I'm clear enough.
And what people are hearing as you're tabbing through those different fields, that's your screen reader literally verbalizing all the different fields for people, for you to be able to hear and then interact with.
Trying to. That's the thing. The developers need to make sure that all fields are labeled correctly, because if they are not, all I'm either going to hear is button, 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 or edit, 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 or a checkbox checked or unchecked. So everything must be labeled appropriately for us to actually get that information, which isn't the case in First Officer Pro.
And I know for us that sounds very quick, the speed of the reader, but we were talking earlier that that's number one, of course, something you get used to, and also that's a setting that you've chosen intentionally so that everything can happen at a particular cadence for you.
Yes, yes. Because if I hear, for example, glide slope alive, runway 26, we're going to be slowing down. We're going to be slowing way the heck down. Maybe. Yeah, drag is required. Hang on.
Feed brake armed.
So we're going to turn on instrument reading. because I need to hear what's being read. And it's not.
Locky card register. FM speed.
Oh, that's why.
270. 263. 262. 261. 267. 268. 270.
So you can hear the click of the switch.
19,004. 11,386. At RT Lex 1/3 PMDTs at RT.
So,
RT but mode plus R.
oi.
Hit the send button. Blank. Clear scratch the button. Refresh button mode plus R. Red only multi-line at RT Lex 1/3.
So,
At RT Lex 1 226 degree 17.1. Equal 260/FL188. 226 degree 17.1 mm.
so we have columns of text. We have Eagle. We have
Sorry,
on
Sarah,
the top.
can we just pause again?
Locky card register. Pause. Sound off.
Thank you. The TFM just moved itself right to a bad spot underneath the FSFO again, and you're just about to start explaining beautifully how it all worked right in a place where no one could see it.
Right.
So, you mind bringing that up and we'll try and move it again? I have no
At RT
idea why
Lex
it
1/3
moved
PM at
itself.
RT Lex. Restore available R. Move M.
That was
Red only
weird.
multi-line
I
select
don't
at
know.
Space.
Yeah, I don't know either. Way back to the right, like a
Space.
long way.
Space. Space. Space.
Keep going a little more.
Space. Space.
That's 2 to the left.
Space.
Perfect. And try enter if you didn't already.
That's probably why I
Okay.
didn't. Okay, that's probably why it didn't work in the first place.
Okay, perfect. So I would just say if you want to unpause and then just start that
Lucky-
again,
lucky
you were
register,
explaining how
lucky
the
register.
screen reader worked.
Okay.
Or sorry, you were explaining how TFM worked.
Unpause. Sound
All
off.
right, so we have
At
two
RT Lex
columns
1/3.
of text,
At RT Lex 1/3. At RT Lex 1/3.
and let's actually take away the drag.
Spoilers retracted. Lucky card register. R3D register.
Let's
269.
whoops.
207.
Let's actually lower our altitude
17,000.
to
17,200.
4,000.
16,000. 5,200. 5,100. 4,800. 4,700. 3,200. 3,100.
Whoa.
3,600. 3,800. 39. 4,000.
There we go.
At RT red only multi-line.
now-
At RT Lex 1/3.
We have two columns of text.
226 degrees 11.8 mm.
226 degrees, 11.8 nautical miles. And then below that,
1 equal 260/FL188.
Eagle 6, or Eagle rather, flight level 18,000 or above.
217 degrees 22.0 mm.
And that is going to be the same through all the legs page, including the holdats.
At RT Lex
So
1
this
226
information
degrees
is
9.3 mm.
literally, I guess this software allows you to program the FMS, and then this information is being fed back from the FMS. So as the next waypoint comes up, for example, this is how you can effectively see and interact with the FMS.
Yep, I can even go direct to waypoints, which we will not be demonstrating at this point because I don't really want to mess up the approach. But we will be going direct. Let's say we had discontinuity. I can take that out by going direct to a waypoint, then closing the discontinuity.
As you showed me earlier.
As I should have left. No, well, it's all right. Yeah,
That was good.
as you
It's,
saw.
it's amazing. I watched you program the star actually, and select the runway and select the transition just like we would do in the FMS, and you would literally pick the key that corresponded with it and then send that command to the FMS and it would do it.
It did it, and it did it fine. So, yeah.
Do you have a screen reader that can actually read charts, or are you
No.
basically using this to read the chart?
We don't have charts. We don't have access to any charts. In fact, no
Right.
charts will read with the screen reader, which is unfortunate. Because I'd love to know, like, the transitions to the runways, to the ILS approaches. I mean, that's the thing we're missing.
Yeah.
So we just got a CDU message.
Lucky card register.
So drag required after some waypoint.
Minus 10 86.
Which
Speed
we
brake
are gonna-
armed.
Let's make some passengers sick. So yay.
Minus 20.
Transition altitude.
And so when you're flying, like
Check.
later on when you do get sort of hands-on, are you using a yoke, joystick, any other hardware controls?
Yeah, I have a throttle to my left, which I have idled, and then I have a yoke to my right, both made by Thrustmaster. I plan on actually getting
17,000 feet.
the, let's take off the
Spoilers retracted.
handbrakes. I'm not in a car. Speed brakes. I plan on actually getting the Turtle Beach thing that was presented at FS Expo. I have too many add-ons on the brain. FS Expo this year. So that thing was cool.
Yeah, that Velocity one flight that they had on display, which I think just came out for pre-orders recently, and it reminds me a lot of the very popular SciTech product. I think it was actually created, I think, by maybe some of the same team that made that. So it's a very
wow.
cool, like, all-in-one unit, and you're not looking at having to buy a separate throttle quadrant. Like,
Yeah.
everything is kind of in one place for it. I think it'll really be popular, especially with the, not to say that it's only them, but I do think anyone who plays this on a console, I
Oh,
think that'll
yeah.
be really interesting for them. Like,
in
I
your
don't know
lap?
if Spencer, Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
sort of in your lap, not really, but
It could be.
it's a
Yeah.
little big to be in your lap. But I mean, just the concept is just awesome. All right, so let's refresh the screen here and see where we are here.
217 degrees 12.4 nm. 15 HOMR 250
We're heading toward Homer, and we were supposed to be
217 degrees 12.4 nm. 1 HOMR 250 17,000 feet.
at 17,000 feet or below, which will make it.
Lockheed Martin.
Yes, if I were doing this on VATSIM right now, it would be exceedingly stressful. I
There's
do
quite a
fly
big
on.
community. That, well, I mean, you're one of them, obviously, but
I'm
I
one of
talk
them.
quite a bit to the Vision Airlines pilots on VATSIM in the Boston area because I'm a controller there, and it's absolutely incredible. Like, and I see in the remarks often they'll say like blind pilot unable to taxi, but that's the only way that I would know that there's anything different because the way that everyone is able to fly and to meet all the restrictions and to fly all the headings, you would never know if as a controller there would be any difference.
Yeah.
206 degrees 10.9 nm. 2 PNOM 210/9004.
Whoa, we're supposed to be at 210. Okay, fine. Let's slow down then.
195. 100.
210.
209. 210.
So we're slowing down to 210. We have
13,457 feet ASL. 10,859 feet app.
we just checked our ASL and AGL. And now we wait. Well, I didn't tune the ILS, so let's actually do that now. I'm going to actually verify the frequency in the init ref page, even though I don't think it changed. That's okay. It did not. So I don't even know why I copied that to the clipboard. It's a habit. You know, old habits die hard. So we're going to
111.75.
111.75, so we're going to pull up the nav radio, 111.75. And course is 258. Well, okay, we are supposed to be at 250, but oh well, it's okay. It's the wrong
Nobody's
speed,
counting.
but really, no one's watching. And if anyone has anything to say about it, they can go through you.
Exactly.
13,000 feet.
So for me, I can, you know, in terms of like the vertical profile, obviously I can see there's a little icon that's showing me how high and how low you are. How do you tell that from your perspective?
How do you mean?
How do you know? So earlier, for example, you were bringing out speed brakes and bringing them back in. How did you know when to do that?
So I had a CDU message saying drag required, so I brought in
Okay.
the speed brakes. But I can actually hit a key on TFM
Minus 1191 feet per minute.
and know that I'm going at minus 1191 feet a minute.
That's awesome.
Descent path on a cheat
Speed
sheet.
brake armed.
Let's fix that. And let's go to our lights page here.
206 nm. 12,000 feet. 1 PNOM 210/9408. Lockheed Martin registered pre-partial. Spoilers retracted.
And we'll be fine.
11,772 feet ASL.
11,772. Well, let's just call it 12,000 feet. I'm not going to be exact here. Yeah, American 1040, descend to 11,772 feet. You said you controlled for Boston, right? I think I've had you before.
Yes, yeah, I work Boston Center on VATSIM. Not as often as I'd like, but often enough.
I plan on, hang on, weather matter going by.
9.0 M, 99.9 M, clouds, number 4 temperature, 29.0 C dew point, minus 3.0 C precipitation, number 4 altimeter, 10 18 MB, 30.05 inches.
I hate talking over my screen reader, even though what just went across my screen wasn't important. I mean, it was, but yeah. I think I've had you before, and I plan on actually trying to learn how to control.
Rio Verde, Arizona, United States, 8.3 nautical miles,
That'd be
247 degrees.
amazing. And you guys, I believe that Ross, who's the developer of a bunch of the controlling plans, he's working on accessibility features, I think, for some of the controlling
That's
plans
what I
as
heard.
well, right?
That's what I heard. I'm not sure how yet, but, you know, we'll get it to work.
I can certainly think of some positions like, you know, clearance delivery, for example.
And
That
ground.
would be a very
but that's
easy
it.
one.
That's the only thing we can do right now is clearance delivery and ground.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice if we could do tower, but right now it's just not feasible. Not unless we ask every pilot, what's your position report, and keep them in our
Right.
heads. There's just no...
I
There,
bet you.
you know, go ahead.
So, well, I was just going to say, not that we simulated
Passing
very often,
10,000
but
feet.
anything that would be non-radar, like oceanic, for example, especially a few years ago when they used to use only position reports, I mean, that would be perfect.
It would have been, yeah. And we just passed 10,000 feet. First Officer Pro told me this. So NAV1 has localizers are alive. Runway heading 880 or 8, something like that. I didn't actually catch the last part of it, but it's alive. And if I were on VATSIM right now, I'd be crapping boulders. But anyway. Yeah, I think I've had you. You sound familiar now that I think about it.
Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out for you in my airspace. It's always the same. It's always that American call sign used earlier, 1040, was it?
Yeah. Do you
Or
want
does
to
it change?
explain what happened? Because, I mean, the earlier probably won't be... Yeah, but what... Yeah. Do you want to
Well, we
explain
did
kind of what
this-
happened earlier when we were kind of
Yeah.
simulating stuff?
Yeah, well, we've done this a couple of times now because the way that you the way that you experience this is very different than the way I'm experiencing it, right? So it's just a totally different thing. It's a little bit of my perspective, you know, just the fact that like I'm watching a screen that you can't see and you literally have no idea what's looking out, you know, what's outside your window. It's such an interesting way for me as a pilot to be looking at what you're doing, and like the concept of flying is just so cool to watch. So yeah, we had earlier on a situation where I think Sarah thought the airplane was in a different place, and I'm looking at it going, no, you're over here, and she's like, are you sure I'm over there? So we decided we would take number 2 or 3 at this point of this particular approach, but she was going to make it either way. The first time we did it, it just took a couple of extra tries, so we thought we'd maybe try and demonstrate one that hopefully goes a little bit more smoothly. So far, it's looking pretty good to me.
Hopefully.
7807 feet, 6334 feet.
So we were at 6034 feet AGL.
7807 feet ASL.
7807 feet ASL. I either go by American 1040 FDX or FDX 1572 right now. I've been Atlas a few times. No, I've been Giant a few times.
Can you see the name of the controllers?
No. Well, I can if I looked, if I were on VatView.
Yeah.
But I normally don't. I just don't.
Yeah.
Glide slope alive.
And I'm bad about looking at. I mean, I rarely have reason to look at the pilot call signs or.
Not
names
unless I'm
either,
being
so-
erratic or, you know, just whatever.
Even then, really. But I'll do my best to listen first of all, because I should recognize your voice by now. You would think.
You would think.
Yeah.
Although I'm saying funny on the radio, but anyway.
Okay, 10 feet, 35 inches.
I'd better start
Right.
paying attention.
XRT Lex 1/2 PMDT fed red only. XRT Lex 205 degrees 1.5 nm. 1. BASL 210. Lockheed Martin register pre-op. Distance to destination. 19/004.
I better slow down to 170, even though this thing says 210.
208. 178. 173.
No way.
168. 167. 169. 170.
I don't trust this plane. I mean, I trust it, but it's... Okay, we're now putting up flaps.
6199 feet ASL.
Flaps 1.
Six 6,000 feet.
And as you can hear,
Flaps 2.
FSFO is telling me flaps 1, flaps 2,
Flaps 5.
flaps 5. We
Flaps 5. 212 knots indicated.
are not ready to actually go to flaps 10 yet. Let me
And I
just
can-
Speed brake armed.
slow down.
I'm sure you probably know this as well, but I can tell you you're about maybe, from what I can see, maybe 5 or 6 miles, maybe even less than that, from intercepting the localizer.
Fed red only multi. XRT
So
Lex
it's looking
1/2.
good. I
XRT
think
Lex.
it's looking good anyway.
XRT Lex 1 205 degrees 2.7 nm. 1. ERDL 210/4500 5500. ST3D 230 degrees 3.3 nm. 2. K 194
Yeah.
Lockheed
I just
Martin
hope I can
I
slow
was
down
pretty
in time.
close.
109
Yeah,
knots
it looks
indicated.
good to me.
189 knots indicated.
Gear
Landing
down.
gear down.
Flaps 10.
Flaps 10.
Distance to destination. 14/004.
Okay,
10.
we're
Gear down.
fine. We're actually
Spoilers
fine. I slowed down right on time. No way was I going to be
Yeah.
at 210. No way. Like I said, sometimes these speeds just don't make any sense. I mean, maybe for a tiny, tiny Cessna or a tiny,
5,000 feet.
tiny plane that can actually slow down, but
Yeah.
not for this.
Most jets are like that. They're very slippery. They don't like to descend and slow down at the same time. So speed management is the key.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what I did probably would just, yeah, I think a pilot would just cringe.
No, I mean, what you did makes a lot of sense, especially lowering the gear. That's something people don't think about. How do I get slowed down, especially if you're above flap speed? So as long as you're below the gear speed, that's the best speed break you've got, is dropping that landing gear.
Mm-hmm.
Flaps
We're going to
15.
flaps 15 a little bit early.
Flaps distance to destination. 11/0.
We're going to refresh the page. Lights page.
233.2 m. 1. J 194/4000
Oh,
days. Lucky hard
shoot.
register.
No.
Approach hold on.
Approach, hold on.
Approach hold off. LNAV
Approach,
off.
hold-
VNAV off.
LNAV off, VNAV off. I've got it.
No smoking sign off.
Landing, checklist.
Landing checklist.
No smoking sign on.
Engine start switches.
I'm on
Continuous.
speed
Landing
bra-
gear.
Speed brakes.
Down. Flaps.
We're not set. Let's just count them as set,
Set.
right now.
Checklist complete.
I
Flaps
am
30.
slowing down to approach speed,
169. 165.
which was
156. 148. 144. Flaps 30. 143. 140.
140. A little slower than I'd like. You know what?
142.
I'll come in a little
470.
fast. Yikes.
165 knots indicated. Minus 932 feet per minute. Flaps 30.
Oh, come on. Go to flaps 40. Come on. Come on.
Flaps 40.
Thank you.
Flaps 40.
That was my 1,000 call.
Minus 709 feet per minute.
We're looking good. Actually, minus 700 and something feet. We're looking really good. So now the plane just flies itself. I think I on the speed brakes. Oh, wait.
Command B on.
CMD on. CMD
Command B off.
So that's going to be fine. What you heard was command B on, command B off, but we're going to be fine. I'm glad I remembered. Let me just quickly check the speed brakes. Nope.
Gear down. Speed brake
Okay.
armed.
So we were fine. Okay, good. Now I normally don't do that, but because I was narrating, I wasn't paying attention. So, to me. Here we go.
1850 feet. 3,000 feet. $142 knots indicated. Minus 791 feet per minute.
Slowly checking stuff. We're looking good at minus 791 feet a minute
1426 feet.
and 1426 feet AGL,
2574 feet ASL.
2574 ASL, and we're at 142 knots indicated. So now we just let the plane fly itself. I'm going to be controlling the reverse thrust, by the way. So I will actually narrate when I do that. But right now I'm going to shut up and hope that we land.
feet.
2,000 feet. I'm narrating the screen readers because you guys might not be able to understand it. Five hundred. 400. 300.
At T3DB4 weather updated. Decoded textual weather for KVHX wind. 0000 knots.
Shut up. Weather.
Minimum.
200 minimums. 100. Here we go.
Speed light off.
Speed light off.
Temp junction Arizona, United States. 3.0 nautical miles.
Reverse thrust.
124 knots. 17 knots.
100 knot.
90 knots.
80 knots. 60 knots. Reverse
Manual
idle.
braking. Well, now manual braking.
Manual braking.
Landing rate, minus 344 feet per minute.
Minus
50 knots.
344 feet a minute.
That was
Landing
beautiful.
off. Add low oil pressure light on.
And now he's going to do the flaps. Well, almost. There we go. It sounds so dainty when he's touching that knob. Just...
Add low oil pressure light off.
And I'm hearing the lights, APU oil pressure light off. And if I wanted to, I could actually go through the cleanup flow. So I can do that. I mean, we're not at a gate, but, you know, fictitious, you know.
Because
so-
there's still, as far as I understand, there's no way for you to taxi.
No, we can't. So we have to actually reposition to a gate.
Add 10 off the light on.
Which,
Engine generator off the
actually,
light on.
why don't we do that? Why don't we do that?
Unavailable.
So
Flex
I
zero.
brought up
Submenu dialog
the
window. Edit search combo box. Menu model
screen.
airports. Combo box. Active runway. Left select your starting
And
location.
we are going to
Expanded.
go
Active runway.
to, let's see. Oh,
Gate 10 small not selected.
gate 10? A10
Combo box. Gate 10
rather?
small left select your starting
No,
location.
gate 10.
Lockheed Martin
It's
register.
gonna
RTD
reload.
register. T4.
I can normally do that a lot
10,
faster,
30, 30 inches. Dot. Pause.
but
Sound off. Submenu
since
dialog
I'm
window.
narrating this. So we are now positioned at a gate
Unpause. Sound on. Lockheed Martin register.
by magic. And we are going to
Left zero.
run through the cleanup flow.
Parking brake on.
Parking brake on.
Number 1 ignition off.
Number 1 ignition off.
Number 2 ignition off.
Number 2 ignition off. I hope I can keep up.
Left flight director off.
Left flight director off.
Left FD master off. Right FD master off.
CDU
CMD off.
master off.
Spoiler
Hey,
retracted.
stop
Navigation
it.
off. Heat off. Taxi off.
Put that
Engine
noise.
off. Light off. Engine generator off. Light off.
Now all the
Navigation
engine generators off.
Taxi
APU bleed is on. Something's on. Something
Number
else is
one
on.
Navigation
There's
off.
a
Heat off.
generator
Number 2
room
generator
that's off. Beacon off. Number 2
Right,
generator
fuel
off. I'm
Right, fuel
trying to
off.
keep up and I'm
Right, forward, fuel off.
failing. All the fuel pumps are going off. So now
RT Lex 1 slash
I'm
1
going
PMDG
to
7
actually go to the
Select.
menu.
Electrical hydraulic pump 1 off. Selection removed. Left
The
side off.
hydraulic
Right side
pumps
off.
are going off. I'm going to go to the 5 right and then go to services or connections as it is sometimes called in the PMDG 777.
Spoilers retracted.
Spoilers have now been retracted.
Refresh button. Alt plus R. Edit red only. Next page button. Edit red only multi-line airplane service 1 slash 4.
And
Lockheed Martin register. Lockheed Martin.
we are going to set the chocks.
Airplane service 1 slash 4 PMDG 7. Ground power 1. Ground power jet A.
I did that in the sim.
Two, let's request INHTV.
Bind. We are going to request ground power. I'm going to pull up the electrical panel, which this isn't complete.
737
So
cockpit.
I'm
Idle
showing you something
Expanded.
that is
Zero item.
kind of incomplete here.
Ground power available.
So we have ground power available.
Level 1 electrical 101.
I'm going
Battery check off.
to
Standby avenue. Passenger seat power check box. Ground power moving. On button.
turn on
Press.
ground power.
Atom gen 1 off plus light on. Engine generator off plus light on. Air Lockheed Martin register. R3D
We are
register.
going to
Lockheed
turn
Martin
off
register.
the APU. We are going to
737. 730.
turn off the
Lockheed Martin.
APU.
Lockheed. Atom gen 1 off plus light off. Engine generator off plus light
There
on.
you go. Sometimes my co-pilot
Seven,
likes to
730.
just play little tricks on me.
Passenger seat power check box checked. Cavity standby power moving.
And-
Auto battery check box checked.
We are going to turn off the battery.
Not checked. Checked. Battery off. Right FD master off. Not checked.
And we are now set for another go.
Well, Sarah, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Sarah, thanks for this. This was a lot of fun for me to take part in. I know I watched your talk live, but then to be able to see you demonstrating the approach and the landing,
Yeah.
and just to be with you watching and experiencing how you are able to experience this has been really cool. So huge thank you both for putting on a great show
Hey,
in San
you're
Diego and
welcome.
for this part of it. And I hope for people who are sighted and who are flying in the sims regularly, you've gotten a whole new perspective on what flying can look like. And if there's anyone out there who's thinking vision is an impairment to being able to fly in the simulator, we've just proven that's completely
It really
wrong.
isn't.
For sure. Well,
Yeah.
again, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. And
It
for
has been.
anyone who wants to learn more, please look at the links in the notes with this video.
Yes.
Explore BVI pilots, explore Sarah's Discord, and keep learning. And we all will. Thanks again, Sarah. It's been a lot of fun.
I hope to be back next year.
Yes,
Well, or whenever there's a, yeah.
we hope so too. Thanks again.
Yay. You're welcome. Bye.